Oh, good. My allergy just started bothering me the second I hit start. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Safely Extreme Cast. This is for the week of August 15th, 2021. We have another great discussion lined up on game dev and getting into the game industry. I am Josh Bycer from Game Wisdom, and joining me, my co-host from Nexus Games, Sharky.
Hello, everybody. I'm getting tired of saying it, but not going to be from Nexus Game for too much longer because we're renaming the company, but hopefully soon. I'm tired of saying that.
All right, well, we'll get the update with the new logo at some point here.
Gotta get a new name first, then a new logo.
But talking about getting things set up for success, we have kind of a three-part discussion planned over the next few weeks here on the Safely Extreme Cast, as we're going to be discussing elements that are important to kind of set yourself up for success when it comes to game dev and indie game dev. And for part one, we're going to be talking about what it means to understand and read the market when it comes to video games. Excuse me. Because this is a topic that I feel a lot of indie developers have this as their blind spot.
Mm-hmm. And the second part, we're going to be talking about how to set up for your best chance at success.
Mm-hmm.
And for the third part, we're going to be talking about community management. And all three of these topics go together. They're a set, And when we say part one, part two, part three, we're talking about podcast one, podcast two, podcast three. So this will be happening over the next 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And the reason why this is important is that a lot of developers, I think, enter this industry without really understanding what does it mean to become commercially viable. And it's important to make that distinction because if you are just doing this as, a part-time, something I do an hour or two when I'm not doing my full-time job, a lot of what we're talking about doesn't necessarily apply to you. But if your goal is to one day say, I am making a living off of my video games and my game company, then this is stuff you need to be thinking about.
Yeah. The fact that there's three parts to this, does that mean we're officially a triple threat?
Maybe. But my hair's just like all messed up. My headset, I just saw it. But while I try and mess with my headset after I'm done saying this, one of the problems I think indie developers tend to have is this idea that if I just sit around and make video games all day, one day I'll get, picked up by, a big famous YouTuber, or my game will become famous and, I can retire off all my games. But it doesn't work like that.
Unless before that happens, you go out and get struck by lightning 3 times, and then you come back, you get to the lotto store, you buy that lotto ticket, and then on the way home, you get struck by lightning 3 more times, and then you get home, and magically your game has done exactly that. But unless you get that exact circumstance, it's not going to happen.
No, it's not. Just like trying to get my hair to behave for today, apparently. It's going out of control.
It's out of
But
control.
but as we are saying, for I guess like the first point I want to talk about, it's this idea of that if I don't see it, it doesn't exist. And this is something that I see a lot of indie developers and people who are trying to break into the industry tend to fall into this trap. That if I don't immediately know 10 examples of what I'm talking about, then surely it doesn't exist in the game industry, and how dare it not exist? And, we need to make something about it right this second. And
Yeah,
kind
what
of
about those people that, say that and they haven't played 10 games?
mm-hmm.
So, I mean, of course they
Or
don't know
they're
any 10 examples of, I don't know, a game where you jump around on plates and that form underneath you and you plate
mm-hmm.
form from that stuff to stuff. It's a brand new genre. Nobody's ever done a platformer before.
Yeah.
Clearly not
And
Nintendo or Sega or anybody else.
or that their only experience to, video games is playing Call of Duty or Fortnite every day. So surely, the whole industry is just Call of Duty and Fortnite, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's the only two games that exist out there. And if
And
you play those two, you know everything you need to know about video games.
you could totally make a visual novel RPG out of that.
What is that even? Because I mean, there's nothing that exists like that.
Mhm. A
It's
game where
just those
you
two
read
games.
words on screen. There's never been
So
anything
that's
like
like
that.
Call of Duty.
hmm But while we're joking about this, there's this tendency among developers to become very insular to, their opinions and to what kind of feedback they take. And if you get feedback that doesn't come from, something that you already expect or from people that, are all your best friends, they tend to completely disregard this. And one of the things that popped up over the last few months that kind of raised a big red flag in my mind was the whole wholesome games kind of craze that happened. I think this was like in June, maybe a little bit earlier than that. When all of a sudden a lot of indie developers just couldn't stop talking about why aren't there any wholesome games? Why is all video games about shooting people? Once again, every video game is either Call of Duty or Fortnite.
Yeah, I mean, clearly every visual novel you shoot people in.
You shoot words at them.
Yeah,
Incidentally, I think there is a game where you shoot words at people, or that was a
yeah.
weapon in Enter the Gungeon.
That was also the that typing game where you killed zombies.
Typing of the Dead, yeah.
Yeah, Typing of the Dead. Yeah.
And the issue, but what's a story game?
Yeah.
But the issue is that a lot of people like jumped on this, or at least it seemed that way on Twitter because I follow mostly indie developers. And the issue was that, first off, what does wholesome mean? What is a roguelike? What is a
Wholesome
Josh
means that
like?
it's whole and some at the same time.
Is that safely extreme?
Yeah, it's more like extremely stupid, but
I mean, are they just trying to make safely extreme games? Maybe we should charge them for royalty or for using our name here.
maybe. Yeah.
But one, nobody could really give a solid answer to it. And two, it caused a lot of, or at least what it seemed like, a lot of developers just to like immediately like jump on this bandwagon of we gotta make a wholesome game, we gotta make it right this minute. And the problem is that one, there are games that exist that don't involve killing or, hardcore violence in any way. And two, it doesn't really answer the question of what do consumers want? I mean, you can say all day long, I just want to make a game around X, and there's nothing stopping you. But if you're trying to take that to a market that wants Y, well, don't be confused why nobody's buying your game.
Well, let's talk about some basic business concepts.
hmm
People buy stuff in the market, because they either need it or want it, kind of thing.
hmm
And if they go to Walmart and they need a toilet plunger, they're going to buy a toilet plunger. If if the price is right and the quality is right, and if they want a donut, again, same kind of principles apply if the price is right and all that stuff. But if they don't want a thing, if they don't want this weird clothes hanger that can hang 5,000 different pieces of garment on it, but because they either already have clothes hangers, they think it's retarded, or anything else, they're not going to buy it.
hmm
And when you make a game, you're making a product. So you have, if people do not want it, then it's not going to sell. And, I mean, people in general a lot of times want games, but they don't want the same exact thing they've already had.
Mhm.
They also do not want, a lot of this weird stuff that is way off path kind of thing. And they
And
don't want anything low quality.
I want to clarify your second point there about weird stuff because you can do experimental concepts as any developer. That's one of the advantages indie dev have compared to AAA. But it still needs to come from a foundation. It will be like saying, I'm going to build a car, but I'm going to experiment by putting the steering wheel on the roof, the brake pads on the windows, airbags, under my tires, and it'll be the best-selling car.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about not working,
Hmm.
Like you can experiment, but you have to, you can't experiment in a broad range of putting the steering wheel on the on the where you bolt the driving wheel because that's just not going to functionally work. You have to, you know, leave many conventions the same. You
You
don't
need
want to
that
break
foundation.
what's not broken, but you can change stuff in a way that doesn't break things. And there's plenty of that. I mean, there's cars where you drive on the right hand side. There's cars where you drive on the left hand side. There's even cars where you drive in the center. There's even cars where you drive in the back seat.
Hmm.
But and there's cars that drive on their own. There's many different aspects to that. But at no point of those is there a car that's being sold where you drive from the trunk. I know there
Hmm.
was a car that was actually that you could drive it from the trunk, but that was just a modified thing that nobody in 10 million years is going to buy. But you don't want to do that, and you're definitely not going to drive from outside the car on the concrete, on the actual wheel of.
There's actually a car that was invented that it turned into a boat that they were playing around with, I think, like 20, 30 years ago.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's plenty
But
of those. I mean, those are
mhm.
pretty common. I mean, in the
What
end,
about
it's
like,
it's not too different from a normal car.
yeah. Can we get a car that turns into like a giant mech, and then we can have like mech fights on the road? When can we get to that?
It's called Transformers,
Yeah,
and it's
but
already
that's never
happened.
existed
Michael
before.
Bay made it happen, and everything exploded in Michael Bay explosions.
But like to bring this into a video game analogy, it would be like making a platformer where jump is tied to start, and every time you hit the start button, your character like jumps like a completely random direction that you didn't even intend to do. And the problem, I think, for a lot of developers is the question that Kin posted. You get an idea and think, how many people want that? And this is like kind of like mistake number one, that they'll take an idea to their five friends or to a very insular community and go, is this idea worth it? And everyone who's friends saying yes, do it, and then you ignore anyone outside of that.
Yeah.
And the problem, and this is something I think a lot of developers need to understand, when it comes to game design tips and the actual production, it's great to talk to other developers about that. When it comes to actually kind of getting started or the marketing and that kind of work, oftentimes developers are the worst people to ask for advice on because a lot of times they don't know it.
Well, I would say it depends because like I've been to certain dev communities where people are 100% ignorant to it.
Hmm.
They're like, just make a game, it'll be fine. And I've been to other communities where they're like, yeah, you need to be very careful about that. You
Hmm.
need to, take these precautions and give similar advice to what we give, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And,
Um.
it all depends on the community, because like certain communities are more talented in certain areas than others, kind of thing. And,
Yeah.
it all depends. But like, that's why as a developer, you need to not just involve yourself in one game dev community, but multiple,
Hmm.
as well as talking to your normal everyday consumers, And you
Yeah.
also need to have a Discord of your own and be in your community asking people what they think there. You need to be asking people what they think everywhere you can possibly do that is not hard marketing, aka not Facebook, not Twitter.
Yeah.
You know,
And you need, and the reason why we talk about this is this pretty much leads into playtesting. It's this idea that maybe I'm not the best person to have an objective opinion on this idea that I spent the last 3 to 5 years of my life on.
oh, definitely not. I mean, like I, worked on, our last game, the old word of the day, Chromasia, for 3 years, and I was, by the end of it, I was blind to most aspects of the game. I didn't even know what the selling points were,
Mhm.
and like I was completely detached from reality to a certain point of it, but I still managed to make a solid game, but completely screwed up so many parts of it, including the stuff that makes it commercially viable, and the game failed. But and I was getting plenty of opinions from a lot of people, but I wasn't getting enough from the right people, and stuff went
Yeah.
sideways. And the thing was, you have to kind of build up people. You have to get feedback wherever you can, and and it's hard. It's really really hard. But like over time, even if you fail your first game, you can keep on expanding your area, keep on expanding your knowledge base as well, and and get more feedback in future games, kind of thing. And you will, through taking more feedback, if you're good at handling feedback, your games will get progressively better and better
Mhm.
and
If you're
progressively more
not,
successful.
but if you're not, then you will still have people who will play your games, but the overall reach of you and your games is going to decline.
Hmm.
And we see this when like a game goes from, first game gets, let's say, 20,000 reviews. Then the second game may only get 10,000 reviews. And the problem is that if you're only catering to a very small group or not understanding what people expect out of the games that they buy, well, you can't really, make a game that's going to be market friendly. And when I say market friendly, I think that raises red flags in a lot of the new developers. The ones who go, I'm just making this for the art. This is my art and my passion. I don't care about making money. Well, if you don't,
Then
then
don't sell it.
yeah. And
And
I
don't
hope
put
you have
ads in
a
it.
full-time job.
Yeah.
I hope you
Don't
have a full-time job as well.
yeah, don't sell it. Don't put your ads in it. Don't have 1 cent of transaction in there if that's the case.
Yeah. And there is nothing wrong with that. But in the same breath, you can't then complain and say, why is nobody buying my game? Well, did you make an art piece or did you make a product?
Hmm.
And like as a
There
really
there's plenty of art paintings that were never sold, never
oh
made any
yes.
money. I mean, like
Hmm.
everyone on your mom's refrigerator is a perfect example of it.
Yeah, I could show you all the art that I made, and then when your eyes readjust from being blinded by the horribleness, you can talk about it.
Yeah, we need an art stream from you.
Hmm. Just blind everybody on the stream.
Yeah.
But like another thing that popped up lately that kind of was one of the reasons why we wanted to have this conversation was there is a bundle on itch that went up that was specifically saying it was a bundle for games with bad graphics made with no crunch that are very small and short, or something along those lines.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
that
see if I
was
can find
about 30 red flags there.
only 30.
30 within the title.
Let me see if I can find. Here it is. The shorter games with worse graphics bundle. And like that line is so like anti-consumer
Mm-hmm.
because as we've said, one of the things you don't want to do as any developer is talk about the problems with your games on your marketing or your store page. Again, the consumer doesn't want to hear this is a game I made while living off the street and I did it all by myself and I had no idea what I was doing, but please give me $20 for it.
Yeah.
The consumer unfortunately does not care about that.
You're better off grabbing a, a cup and going and stand on the street corner, and you probably get like $150, $200 there.
Hmm.
Probably more than you're going to make off of that game asking $20 for it.
Hmm. And to Ken's point there, I mean, it's this is one of those very weird points because at the end of the day, if you're a developer trying to live in this industry, you need to make money for you need to make games for consumers. Now, the thing is that for a lot of developers, having fun with game development, living off of game development, sometimes those two coalesce. But at the same in the same token, it is something you have to consider. There's a reason why developers like Jeff Voe, Cliff Harris, Jay Burkett are still in this industry. Because while they make games that they love to play, they also understand that these games have to bring in enough money so they can live off of it.
Yeah. And the thing is you really have to have both of those to really truly be successful at game development. And I'm when I say truly successful, I don't mean just making money. I mean making money, doing good things in the industry, and being in generally happy with what you're doing. Because I mean, you could always just go for the consumer aspect, dump happiness on the road and be the next EA, Take Two, Blizzard. Nobody, everybody loves Blizzard, right? Just go there and get sexually harassed. I mean,
Mhm.
just a fun time, right there. You can definitely, and you could, also see the other side where they just do the fun side and not for consumers, where they make these really crappy jank games that were fun for them to make, but no consumer wants to touch it, kind of thing, because
Mhm.
it's horrible.
Yeah, and
And you really, to really truly be successful, in my opinion, you have to do both.
because at the end of the day, there's one simple fact. If your game brings in less money than it costs to make it, it commercially failed.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't care if people from Polygon or Kotaku wrote about how amazing it touched them and it was the most soulful expressionist game they've ever played. If you are thousands of dollars in the red, you're in trouble.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened in my last game. And
Hmm.
I mean, Polygon or anybody didn't write about it, but the reviews were 100% positive,
Hmm.
and had nobody that did not enjoy the game. But I know from hindsight and from examination and everything else, I know that the game has many shortcomings. But the key shortcoming was the art that prevented the game from being successful. I mean, even if we had the art on point, it would be debatable too if it would be successful. It probably would have, but it wouldn't have been as successful as it could have been.
And I want to kind of build off of what you just said there because this is another thing about what it means to read the market. because you need to understand what you did right, what you did wrong, and where you can improve with all your games.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of indie developers, especially those who do get some level of success, I think they ignore points 2 and 3. That okay, my first game sold well, it must have been perfect, or I didn't make any problems with it. Look at how much we earned. But
That would be if they got success on their first game. Which,
mhm,
when you get success on your first game, you pretty much fell on every game after that
mhm,
because you, like you said, you miss a couple points there. Where those who fell on their first game are able to maybe possibly get all 3 points. And getting all 3 points is what leads to success. It
yep,
it won't it won't take you all the way to it, but it's what leads you there.
it's cool.
It puts you on the highway, and then there's 500 different ways you can get to a particular city, and there's like 5,000 different ways you can get lost. But it puts
Yeah,
you on the highway so you can possibly get there.
yeah, and a lot of what we talk about is focus on mitigating that risk because there is no such thing as the 100% guaranteed successful game. Unless, of course, you're Nintendo.
Yeah.
Again, just be Nintendo and make Call of Duty and you'll be successful.
Yep. Nintendo of
But
Duty.
there you go. But for a lot of developers, you have to be able to understand that you probably messed up at some point during your development, whether by, on purpose or just because you didn't know any better at that time. One of the, excuse me, one of the most common things I hear from first time or kind of developers just starting out is that if they could remake their last game using what they know now, they could probably do it in half the time because a lot of that is just building up that knowledge. And if you can improve, the point is you want to always be improving with your games. And I feel for a lot of developers who don't understand the market or just kind of stick to one thing and not try to improve, they're just kind of spinning their wheels in the sand there. And that is not going to lead to that success. Or it's going to make it that much harder to have that winning game.
Yeah. And well, what Kinzen, I want to bring up what Kinzen said, even though it's a different topic about, game success after investors have so much no's and has the opposite effect
Hmm.
and everything. And, also what Board said about, gaming investors of gaming companies need to be gamers. The thing is, that's pretty much not going to happen. Not,
Yeah.
not I mean, eventually,
Not
when
in our
everybody's a
generation.
gamer, yeah, but, the fact is, even then, they're not the same kind of gamer, so, like, it's never going to be one for one. So you might as well consider that it's never going to happen. But here's the thing, is that investors invest to make money. It, investor investing is all about greed, in other words. So when you have investors that are all about greed, and that's all investing is essentially, is that you're going to be skewed towards greed in a game, and that's going to follow through and come out in the game. That's the reason why indies are much loved, because in most cases, indies don't have investors unless it's like a Kickstarter campaign or something along that lines, which is a very different kind of investment. You know, kind of not an investor at the same point, but technically is. It doesn't have the greed side of it for the most part. And but indies are much well loved most of the time because the fact is usually the the well, pretty much all the time, the person who's designing the game, the person who has the owns the company, has the will to make that game the best game they can.
Hmm.
And they're going to be limited by budget and all kinds of other stuff, but they're not going to compromise their vision in any way they don't absolutely have to, rather than being forced to by investors and everything. So like that's what makes indie, because you're
Mhm.
independent from ties that, restrict your game, you know, directly overhead, people. I mean, you're still bound by restrictions, tons of restrictions, because making an indie game is not easy. But
Yeah.
like you're not, you don't have people over you.
Yeah.
You don't have
And
investors.
to as another like quick aside to Kin's point about why game series become bad over time, there's one of the things that's very interesting about indie development, sorry, that most indies don't do established sequels. Like they're not making, Legend of Zelda 1 to 8. And what one of the reasons why we see that is that most indie developers kind of put everything they want into that first game. It's a reason why, we see developers like what was it, Mark of the Ninja from Clay, Kid Fox's games, that they tend to focus on a singular idea and concept, develop it as far as they want to, and then they want to go do something else. Like I remember when I interviewed Chris Park from Arkin, and one of the reasons why he kind of resisted making an AI Wars 2 for so long was he didn't want to make another game. He put everything he wanted into that first game. And the only reason he kind of was forced to make a sequel was that, well, he needed the money or his studio was going to close.
Hmm. But I mean, there is a reason to make sequels, and
Hmm.
that the most key reason, the most easy reason to make a sequel is story.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know, because you why are you going to maybe include all the mechanics you want into the game? If you have this massive sprawling story, there's no way you can implement that in one single game. Because if the story takes place over like it would take literally like 10 years to read the thing, then it's going to take like 20 or 30 games to get it in there.
Hmm. Yeah, and to bring this back to our topic in terms of like understanding, again, one of the things I see developers kind of fail on, going back to what we were saying a few minutes ago, is that part of understanding the market is understanding similar games to it. Like we said at the start, there are developers out there who think, oh, what if I made this game that involves jumping on one plate to another? It's never been done before. I'm going to say it in my marketing. Or never before seen game. Characters on the left hand side of the screen lining up to fight characters on the right hand side. It's a completely original concept, right?
Yeah, completely. Never seen that before. I do want to hit on something that was said in there that Kenzan said, specifically, to build upon previous games and not dumb down the series. I mean, like, it depends on what you mean by dumbed down.
Hmm.
Because,
Streamlining is not dumbing down.
yeah, streamlining, making UI, UX better is not dumbing down a game. It's making it easier to play, easier to learn, but it's not dumbing it down, and
Hmm.
you want to yeah, a lot of people think the streamlining
Thank
is
you,
dumbing
board
down,
game.
and it is totally not. Streamlining is making the game better,
Hmm.
but you don't want to mess up the game. You don't want to make the game worse. You want to make the game better. Streamlining makes the game better. Taking out content, unless it was specifically causing issues, is bad. You know, And I mean,
Hmm.
there's plenty of examples in that where like live services or even non-live services like card games, for example, have a ban list because that content breaks the game,
Hmm.
and
Or
and you know and taking that stuff out can make the game better by taking out the game breaking stuff, and you technically lose some stuff out of there, But if you're losing stuff like that, you have to add stuff. I mean, you're going to have to add stuff anyway in a sequel because if it's even if you added everything you wanted mechanically to the first one, you need to have, if you're going to do a sequel, you need to have stuff you want to add mechanically to the second. You know, it
And
doesn't have to be like game changing, but you know, like there has to be something new.
yeah, and another point about sequels, I think we may be getting a little bit off topic here, is that typically when it comes to sequels, this is your chance to kind of really go big with your idea. The first game is often the test bed. It is the proof of concept that we can make a game around X, Y, and Z. We may not include everything we want in it, we just want to make sure that this actually works and is commercially viable. And this is often why we see those big jumps in quality, going from, let's say, Dead Space to Dead Space 2, Assassin's Creed 1 to Assassin's Creed 2, Mario, Zelda, you name it. And you need to have that first game. You know, it's kind of like the boat needs to be able to float on water before you then say, let's build a commercial, luxury cruise liner.
Yeah. And the first Assassin's Creed was good. The second one was great.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
and you know, the three following that were amazing.
Hmm.
The one following
Now,
that,
now where are we?
not good. The one following out after that one, good. Everyone following after that one, train wrecks.
But being able to understand what people expect out of a genre, this is again, I think, where a lot of indie developers and people like coming in from the outside tend to struggle with. Because let's go back to a platformer. Because this is something that I talked about in my second book. That a lot of people think a platformer is just, I'm going to run from one side of the screen to the other, hit the button, character jumps up, and it's going to be the best selling game, or it's going to be a really amazing game. But just being able to make that act of jumping feel good in the player's hands, feel like something they want to do for the next 10,000, 30,000 button presses, that is hard. There is a lot that goes into good platforming design. Just as there's a lot that goes into good first person shooting and RPGs and horror, or, as a brief spoiler, my fifth book, free to play games. And if you don't, if you completely tune out any other games, thank you, Kinson, exactly. If you tune out everything else that's being made in this space, you are not going to have a successful game because you're not going to understand not only what works in the genre, but what doesn't. And I just spoke with Paul Ritchie and Fred Ford, who are making Star Control. We talked about this. One of the reasons why you want to play bad games or games that didn't, become massive successes is this is how you learn what landmines to avoid. Because if all you do is, like with Darkest Dungeon, if all you do is say, I'm going to play Darkest Dungeon and make, Darkest Dungeon 1.5, you're not going to understand all the other games that came out that try to do that and they didn't work. And this is why when developers try to copy other genres or other games that did really well, 9 times out of 10, they often end up failing to make a better game.
Yeah, and I want to talk on the point about the you know, platformer where you just run over and jump kind of thing.
Hmm.
You know, when you don't spend details on that and you don't put in details on that, that's very easy to do. I mean, like
Yeah.
very easy. Like
All first
I
person
can't.
shooters are you just click a button, the guy shoots a gun.
Yeah, like I cannot program my way out of a soggy wet back. You know what I mean? I to save my life. I could not do that to save my life, and I could very easily program exactly what you're talking about in probably about 5-10 minutes.
I
It would.
even did that. I made an endless runner in Unity where a red square jumped over a blue square.
Yeah.
I mean, I could sell that on Steam for like $30, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, like that is like no effort at all. It's easy.
Hmm.
There's nothing to it, you know. And
If you
like,
want to make a horror game, just copy Five Nights at Freddy's. You're done.
yeah. I mean, like there are so many simple things that you can do in programming, and he'll get you a quote unquote game, but it won't be one worth playing. You know,
Yeah.
like I could spend 15 minutes and create a game, and I could spend another 15 minutes and create a quote unquote game. And the they're not going to be worth shit, but they will be technically functional as games. I mean, I could do Flappy Bird in about 10 minutes, and it would be the same quality, if not better, than the actual Flappy Bird. You know,
Mm-hmm.
because Flappy Bird didn't take long to program.
Mm-hmm.
And keep in mind that I am not a programmer. I am scared of programming. I will
Oh,
not
yes.
touch programming. I hire a programmer for my team because I'm not competent in programming.
Yeah.
And I could do this and better than a lot of these other people without even trying.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not I'm completely illiterate, kind of thing
Yeah.
when it comes to this kind of thing. It's like somebody who you know let's say has spoken German all their life. They've never heard another word from it, and then they watch one episode of something on TV, and you know they're better at speaking English than somebody who is selling their English speaking course on there, and the only thing they can do is quote one word, aha, or something,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and that's all they can do, but that aha is still better than what some people sell to teach you how to learn English. And those kind of games that are like that are quote unquote not a game.
Yeah. And like I think Kinzen, there we go. We got our perfect game. We could totally finance Neon Tomb just off that one idea, I bet.
Yeah,
But for a lot of developers out there, if you're not understanding the greater market for a genre, you're never going to be able to make something that's going to interest people in that genre. You may get, hardcore fans and followers, but that's not the same as building something that's going to be able to compete in that space. If you remember
I'm
when I
honestly
spoke,
surprised that any of them get hardcore followers. Like I've seen some of those games and they got like 3 sales. It's like, how the hell did you pull that off? How did
eh,
you find three suckers that dumb to buy this crap?
if you remember when I spoke with developer Other Shark from Vision Soft Reset, like Vision Soft Reset was not a commercially successful game. Let's rip that band-aid off right now. But
Sadly.
from a, from a mechanic standpoint, that game was like 9/10 like amazing. Like there were some issues with it I think came into a lack of funding and having to rush it. But the core gameplay was fantastic. And when I asked him on the interview about, did you work on other Metroidvanias before? He said no. Like, this is my very first game. But you know what he also said? He's been playing and studying Metroidvanias and platformers in preparation of building that game.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, even though it
Proper
wasn't
research.
commercial, yeah, and being able to research and understand games is different than just playing them. And this is one of the things like we saw in the news, like something about like I think Doctor Disrespect is like pulling together all these gaming influencers to try and build video games.
Mm,
And how many red flags did you see on that?
all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen
But
more red flags in there than I've seen whatever
red
energy
flags
drink he
for
promoted in the energy drink commercials he made, and the red
and
flags in there.
and the thing is, just because you play a lot of video games doesn't mean you understand the design behind them. And being able to comprehend that is one, it's incredibly hard to do if you don't have that background, and two, it is a very vital skill as a developer. In a post that I just wrote, I said this line that being able to understand the quality of a game divorced from your own opinions of it is very important to do. You cannot like a lot of video games. There are a lot of genres that I don't like to play, but I still can understand the design and the philosophy behind them, and I can say whether or not this worked or didn't work for those fans. I may not be a fan, but I can still respect a game's design if it pulls it off.
Yeah. There is certain genres I can't understand at all though. Like I cannot understand the first person shooter genre because they all seem the exact same design to me. You point and you shoot. You have different weapons, you have different maps, copy and paste, and pretty much all of them are exactly the same, just different guns and different, which is all
I have,
just map packs and just different weapons and just like okay,
I have
it's just
never
all
played
mods of the
Roadblock.
same game. I mean, they're not doing anything different. I mean, like I can't understand anything farther than that.
T minus 10 seconds for the Doom Eternal fans to come in and yell at you there, Shark.
Well, Doom Eternal did do a lot of stuff different.
Well, okay, T minus 5 seconds for them to come in and yell at you after that. But yeah, like,
The one thing I did see doing different is that one where you were platforming at the same time and running around. It was really hardcore.
Ultra Kill?
Yeah, Ultra
Mm-hmm.
Kill. That one was legitimately different, and I actually, somewhat liked that one because of
Mm-hmm.
that. It
Yeah.
didn't feel exactly the same. And
Mm-hmm.
Doom didn't feel exactly the same, but it felt pretty close.
But to get to that point of being able to elevate a genre or elevate a design, it takes studying that market and studying that game. There's a reason why, for the longest time, Blizzard was considered one of the marquee game developers because their whole MO was just basically let's take a game genre, let's make it better. And that was it. Like they didn't really make brand new games. They just took whatever was popular and say, let's make the wheel better. And they were one of the few studios who could do that.
Hmm
Now, today's Blizzard, not so much.
They're really great at stuff at today's Blizzard.
Yeah,
They're great at getting sued.
Windows.
They're
Mm-hmm.
great at
They're experts at getting scandals.
yeah. They're experts at allegedly harassing people and allegedly doing other bad things.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
And it has to be allegedly until they prove it in court.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the need to play. But to bring this back again to as we were saying about, understanding the market around video games, it is about having to comprehend why a game failed. And this is something I think a lot of developers, especially those who are just starting out, really fail to learn their lessons. Because you can have a game that, in a way, succeeded, but it still failed. Like if a game
Is that safe
just
history?
maybe it's a successful failure. There we go. And we see this from a lot of smaller or the quote unquote art games that the game may have earned enough money to, bring in a profit. It got covered by major developers or, major names brought it up, major critics talked about it. But then we play it for like 10 minutes and we can just start putting together a laundry list of issues that we find. And this is why, like on my show Completion Critiques, I talk about churn rates, we talk about UI UX, because these elements are foundational. And if you can't get the foundation right, your game is just, it could do so much better.
hmm Yeah, UI UX is definitely something that you need to deal in every game.
Hmm. And UI UX, again, is different from accessibility. Because a lot of people will argue, well, if we just have an assist mode or we have 27 difficulty settings, then our game is perfectly balanced, right?
Yeah,
If you could just
exactly.
hit auto skip, the game works. Why are there any problems with it? You could just skip
The
all
entire
the
game.
Yeah, I did that with Eichenfell. I really enjoyed the story of Eichenfell, but there were some issues with that gameplay that if that wasn't an option, I probably would have stopped that game so much earlier.
hmm I think a
But
lot of
again,
the issue with that was that it was too samey. There was too much of the same thing over and over again.
mhm,
And,
yeah,
they could have easily solved that by just putting less encounters in there, you know,
yeah.
and
But
or
again,
made the encounters feel legitimately different, but that would have costed more budget because they would need
mhm,
more enemies and enemy
it would
types or
speed things up.
animations,
Yeah.
stuff
And
like that.
again, these are issues that can sink a game. Or it leads into that death by a thousand cuts. That, if your UI is bad, then your core gameplay loop is bad. If your core gameplay loop is bad, your moment to moment is bad. And all these things add up. And it's often why we see games that have these problems have massive churn rates. Because, yes, you'll start at 100%, but then you'll quickly go down to 75%. And then maybe 75% goes down to 55%. And then maybe it stabilizes at 45%.
Probably
But
not
then of
though.
that 45%, maybe only 10% actually made it through to your game.
Yeah, it's hard, you know.
That's the MO. That'll be the major point for the next three streams. It's hard. And ask a lawyer, too.
Yeah, I was about to say, what can we say that's not ask a lawyer?
It's hard.
No, I mean
And
after it's hard.
uh, we'll have to figure that one out.
It's hard. Ask a masochist.
We have one right here, thankfully. We have a weird masochist.
Yeah, which is clearly different.
Yeah. But and I think this is another point that we've been kind of dancing around. There we go. Just use one of the things we discussed earlier, and we'll get all the people watching.
Yeah.
But this is something else we need to bring up about understanding the market. We've been kind of dancing around this point, but it needs to be said. Critical success is not the same as commercial success. I don't care if all your famous developer friends say that your game is great. I don't care if Northernlion, Markiplier, PewDiePie, anyone else says that they love your game. If at the end of the day, if your game is not pulling in enough money, or if the market rejects your game, it failed.
hmm And Board is asking if dress-up games, if they're even successful. Some of them are. But
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's a line of dress-up games, Barbie dress-up games on multiple platforms. I think they're mainly on handheld though, that are
Mm,
pretty dang successful because I mean they're paying for the Barbie license over and over, and they keep on making sequels. So
yeah.
yeah, that they're
And,
bound to be successful. But are
and
they successful off of the license, or are they successful off of the gameplay? And I bet it's the license. But who knows? I never played one, but I do know they have to be successful with how many sequels and everything else they're getting. But
yeah.
are all dress ups successful? Absolutely not, because
Uh, and
not all of anything is successful. But how many? What's the ratio? And how does that compare to ratios of other genres and stuff? And I don't know.
yeah. And there's a
Ask a lawyer.
difference between somebody liking a genre and liking your particular version of it. And this is again one of those points that goes back to platformers. Every platformer is just like Mario, right? It's just Mario times a million. No, that's not how it works. That there are different interpretations. Like, I don't feel that there is such a thing as the 100% niche genre. That there is a specific gameplay loop that is so niche it will never be able to blow up. But there are different takes. There's different versions of this. There's a reason why more people have probably heard of Sid Meier's Civilization than they have something like Stellaris. because Civilization was meant to be more of a consumer-friendly, more mainstream game. Now,
Mm-hmm.
does that make it the best, turn-based or 4X game? Probably not. And if I did say that, then I would get all those fans coming in to attack me. But you have to be able to understand at the end of the day, how do you make this, you know, consumer friendly? How do you make it approachable for people? It's like as a really good counterpoint, a really good example, it's something that we're seeing with the retail release of Dwarf Fortress. Dwarf Fortress is a game that is considered to be very successful. It's very popular. But it is such the exception to everything that we've spoken about over the last, where are we at? Over the last hour of playing or hour of talking. And what Kid Fox is doing, what they're kind of bringing from their expertise, is UI UX.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that
And
a
art.
lot of, yep, and it's something a lot of people who've been chasing Dwarf Fortress have failed on. Because they just said, let's just make Dwarf Fortress with better graphics. We don't care about the UI UX. Surely people will buy our slightly shinier version of Dwarf Fortress. And most often it didn't work like that.
Nope. And they probably also did not nail the core gameplay.
Hmm.
So it was a worse game with better graphics and the same bad UX, UI.
Yeah. And UI UX is one area where sequels or imitators, if they fail on, they will get raked over the coals for it compared to that first game. And it's something that we've said before. The first game that blows up can really much avoid or does not get caught in a lot of the criticisms or complaints of that genre because they're the first one to do it or the first one that everyone hears about to do it.
Yeah. But Fortnite is one of those exceptions. But they are the exception because they did everything PUBG did, but better.
Yep.
And by better by a large margin kind of thing. And they had something that made them different. You know, the whole building aspect that adds to everything that's in
They
PUBG.
only they not only did it bigger, they did it better, and they did it differently.
Mm-hmm.
And that is pretty much textbook example of how you beat the king at their own game of a genre.
Mm-hmm.
And it's why, like, as another bring this back to platformers, it's why nobody has managed to beat Mario. Because everyone has either done Mario but worse, or Mario but just like the same exact thing.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has done Mario but better. Other than Nintendo kind of like upping their own game with each new Mario title.
Yeah. But a few people have done Mario but different. You know,
Yeah.
Sonic, Banjo and Kazooie.
But they still didn't do it above and beyond what Nintendo has done.
Yeah.
And again, it's why the platformer genre really just shrunk down. Like I'm really looking forward to a few of the indie platformers that we've played, but I also know that at the end of the day, they are not going to be taking the crown away from Nintendo.
They just have to be Nintendo.
Yeah, and then make Call of Duty.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, like Fortnite, like I'm not a fan of that style, like that very like unreal sheen that a lot of developers kind of use for their games. But when you compare that to a screenshot of PUBG,
The asset flips?
it's
Because it is an
yeah,
asset flip in the end.
yeah,
PUBG is an asset flip.
yeah. Again, this is why aesthetics will always triumph over just graphical polish, or I'm sorry, just graphical art.
Especially when it's assets that are
Yeah.
mismatched.
Oh yes. Like that game we played last week, that Mech Armada game. I really like the design of that game.
Mm-hmm.
But the entire use of assets, even if they're being slightly touched up, it just makes the quality of that game look so much lower.
Yeah. And the thing about assets is, you know, a lot of people swear by them, and a lot of people don't succeed with their games. You know, is there some kind of correlation? But there, probably. But here's the thing about using assets. We're not saying to not use assets. We're saying to be very careful about using assets.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, for example, if you were making a pixel art game, if you find one asset pack that includes a lot of things you need, kind of thing, and it has the style and everything that you're looking for, maybe it's worth picking up. And then you pick that up and you have your artist add to that,
Mm-hmm.
and allow them to change the base thing into something that fits their style more. But make sure everything is consistent and everything else. And if you do it that way, it'll be fine. Now, if you go and pick up a bunch of different assets, kind of thing, and then you'll plop all those to an artist and tell them to change them and make them fit, kind of thing, it's not going to be great. And number two, the artist is not going to have a good time. And number three, it's going to cost you more money. You're not saving yourself any money. The only way you'll save yourself money is doing the path I'm talking about, where you just do the one set kind of thing. Because when you start asking, getting all these other sets in, I've talked to multiple artists where they told me that they had jobs where they were throwing a bunch of asset packs and then told to make it, better and fit together kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they said it took way more work than what it would to just take the one asset and then just build a whole bunch of new assets based off of that with little tweaks to that.
Yeah.
But
And
it's just more expensive and lower quality. You're paying more and getting less.
like this would definitely lean into like more about the production and development side. And managing people along those lines, and that's definitely another topic in of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we are over an hour into our talk. We do have one final topic that will kind of be our segue into next week's show. But before we get to that, anything else that you want to discuss, or did we miss for the rest of this topic?
I don't know. Do we want to save that for the next topic?
We could certainly lead off with it.
Maybe we could just talk a little bit about it and then kind of hint to it, if you were, start the
Yeah.
conversation, and then just carry the conversation to the next one.
All right, we'll do that for like the next like 5 minutes, and then we'll wrap it up from there, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the final point, this is what will lead into our next topic, is that being able to understand the market is also about understanding what you need to do to succeed as a developer. Because as we've said over the course of the last hour and what we've said on many of our other talks, being able just making video games, even just making good video games, that is not enough to succeed in today's market.
You.
People have expectations. They not only want good gameplay, but they need you to present that in a way that it works for them.
Yeah, and we talk about this in our Indie Inquiry show every
Mm-hmm.
every week, where marketing is a vital part of being successful. You know, and
Mm-hmm.
and in marketing, the most important part of marketing is your trailer. And
Mm-hmm.
but your trailer can never be on point if you don't have good art in your game. So like there's so many aspects that just if you don't do good marketing, you're not necessarily going to fail. But you're not necessarily going to die if you take a 1,000 chamber gun and put 999 bullets in it and pull the trigger. I mean, you could get that one chamber that is empty and live. You're not necessarily going to die, but the odds are you're pretty much guaranteed to die. Yo,
Yeah. And like we've said, there is nothing that is 100% guaranteed about this. But if you do, like another thing that we say from our show each week, that typically the games that do well, they start by doing something really great. They have a really great core gameplay loop. Then they take that and they build a really great aesthetic around it. And they use that to make a really great trailer, which then leads to a really great store page,
And
which
really
leads to
great
more,
music in the game.
eh, which leads to people being interested in this game, which leads to them talking about it, which then leads to YouTubers and streamers covering it. And it's why when we talk about understanding the market and doing everything about this isn't about going from, day one, 0 sales, day two, 500 million sales. It is about basically consistently doing the right thing that builds that snowball effect. And when you can start, once you have that momentum going, it's why a lot of the games that do well continue to do well. The rich getting richer kind of adage.
Yeah. And there's one key aspect to that everybody, almost everybody overlooks. You know, when you talk about the small indie scene. As a matter
Mm-hmm.
of fact, they encourage to make that mistake, and that's solo development. Because
Mm-hmm.
when you look at these games, they're really great at art, really great at get core gameplay, like really good at the story and writing, really good at marketing, really good at all of this other stuff, kind of thing. And the thing is no one person is talented in all that stuff that we know of in game development. There's one person that's close, and that's Mr. Concerned Ape over there with Stardew Valley, but he didn't market the game. He was not good at that. He went to
Mm-hmm.
a publisher and had a team of marketers working for him to market the hell out of Stardew Valley. So not even him, the as far as I know, the most omni-talented game developer ever was able to actually truly solo develop the thing. And buying assets does not make you solo, because if you're buying assets, somebody worked on those assets, meaning that somebody else worked on your game, meaning that if somebody worked on your game, you're not solo, unless your name's Han Solo. But that's a different kind of solo. But like
Yep.
the we need to kind of break this, you know, mold of thinking that solo development is a way that you can succeed commercially. I mean,
You can
you can still succeed, but again, 99 bullets, 99, 999 bullets in a 1,000 chamber gun, you might get lucky, but you're probably not.
Yeah, and again, you can be a sole designer. You can be the one person who built the whole gameplay loop, you built all the systems together, but solo designer is not the same as solo developer.
Hmm. You
And
could be solo programmer, solo artist, solo a lot of
yeah,
things. And many people are. There are many successful studios that have a solo in one role. I mean, like, I'm solo in a lot of roles on the
yeah,
continuum kind of thing.
but
But
that doesn't.
that does not make me solo, because,
Yeah,
like, I'm not a solo programmer. I'm not solo artist. I'm
mhm,
not solo musician, you know, and who knows what else I'm not solo of.
yeah,
We'll have to see what else is going on. But, like,
mhm,
I'm not having a massive team. Like, so far there's been three of us in total. Well, technically four of us in total that's worked on this game. But two are not still on right now. It's just two of us that are currently active. But
mhm,
that does not make me a solo. And just because they're, like most of those people are outsourced, also does not mean that it's solo. If you outsource all the people, I mean, solo means you made the game by yourself, meaning that if you're saying that you bought assets or you hired somebody outsourcing kind of thing, you're discrediting them from your work, from their work, claiming that you did it because you made that game solo, and that's all kinds of levels of corrupt. I can see how people can make that assumption kind of thing, but like it's not true, and it's a bad shady path that will lead to, if it's continued down that route, it'll lead to, that person becoming the next EA, the next Take Two, the next Bethesda, the next Blizzard, kind of thing.
Mhm.
Because if you're discrediting people at the early stages of you being in development, what are you going to do when you get to the higher stages? I mean, it's just it's a very bad road to
Mhm.
take. Now, making a game solo is not completely bad. You know,
Mhm.
doing it to learn is very, very good. You're learning. But when you're doing it to learn, you're not doing it to sell a game. You're doing it so you can learn programming, so you can learn art, whatever aspects you're wanting to become solo in or become skilled in. You're doing it in that part, and maybe the game has no music,
Mhm.
no this, no that kind of thing. But it doesn't matter because you're doing it to learn, and then you can take those skills that you learned and apply that to your next game, which may be a commercial game, which then you have other people that you hire that then come and help you and fill in those gaps in your talents. But like there's just just being purely solo is a trap. And not to mention how much work it goes in game. Being solo for a commercial game and trying to get commercial quality on everything, that is a nightmare. That's infeasible. That's saying that the world speed record on speed running this game is 2 hours kind of thing, and you're going to do it in an hour and a half tomorrow,
Mhm.
and it's not feasible.
Yeah, and again is why this segues into setting yourself for success. Is that understanding the market is about understanding what work went into a game's success, and I think the industry really has a problem with this. So many sites and YouTubers and streamers will only prop up the games that made it, or the
Cream of the crop,
heartwarming stories. What was that?
the cream of the crop,
Yeah.
the
And
cream that rises to the top.
And then everyone just thinks, oh, Darkest Dungeon made it because IGN covered it. Or, PewDiePie yelled and died in it. But the problem is that there's so much more that goes into being successful as a game developer that, like we said earlier, that if all you do is just scope out the 10 out of 10 and Game of the Year winning titles, you're not going to see all the hurdles that they jumped over, all the work that went into it, and more importantly, the mistakes that they avoided that other people have made.
Yeah, and to Amir's point, possibly if you're the only one that works on it and you don't use any assets, but it's kind of hard to have game without code. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's possible, but it wouldn't be a video game. It'd be a tabletop game at that point, which is where I started game development at. I started as a tabletop development and made my own tabletop games because I started as the writer, and then I moved into designing. So
Mm-hmm.
writing and designing is not all you need, but it's the main things you need for a tabletop game. But a tabletop game is not a video game, but it is still a game, and you still need more than that because you still need illustrations, you still need UI elements and all kinds of other stuff inside of a book. But like
Mm-hmm.
it is a aspect of where you could make a game, kind of thing. And yeah, I mean, like that's where I started. So yeah, I mean, like you could potentially solo make a game if you have solo make a tabletop game if you're talented in art and design and writing and UI.
Mm-hmm.
Although UI for a book is completely different from UI for a video game.
Mhm. Oh, yes. But I think with that, let us wrap things up here. And for next week, we're going to talk more about what do you need to do to give yourself the best chance at succeeding as a developer. So, as always, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're interested in following us, you'll find links in descriptions to Twitters and Discords and all that down in the descriptions.
Yep, and make sure to lick the smash button, smack the lick button on both of our channels. And
Yep, smack the like button.
yeah, smack the lick button and lick the smash button. And you know, go down in the description. There will be links to many things. Josh's channel, my channel, Discord for both of us. We each different. So like come in and join both Josh's, my Discord, our YouTube channels, everything. Just join all of it. Just
Mm-hmm.
and smash all the like buttons and lick all the smash buttons and smash the whatever and lick the whatever, lick everything. Just don't do like that one girl on the news and go to the grocery store and do that.
All right, we'll be back next Sunday starting around 4:30 ET. And if you want to catch our show Indie Inquiries, where we review indie game store pages, that is Thursdays starting around 3:34. So with all that said, my tongue's getting tongue tied as well.
Maybe
Come
from all
back
the
for
licking.
yeah, come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where some of the art and science of games. Until next time, take care.
See ya.